Hey, Mark, want to go?
I forgot how much fun the movie is, and it was a ride pretty much from the first reel through there. And it was great to see it in the theater with the audience and hear the reactions.
Well, for me, it was really fun to see it on a big screen. It has been 25 years.
Has been 25
I've
years?
seen it on TV. Just on the big screen, it really, really comes across. You know, we'll talk about more of this, but how much work we all did. Oh my God. And how do we figure all that stuff out? I'm still asking myself that.
Yeah, I did it the same way, actually. The last time I saw it was actually 20 straight 25 years ago. So I haven't seen it since then. And usually I go back to old films that I worked on. But it really was fun to watch. And I thought that the whole thing was really, really well done. You know, and it was just me, us and me, but I mean, everybody, the whole group of us. And so it was really great. It was treated like Greg said. It was really complicated. So it
Yeah,
took
we'll get into that.
It took a lot of work and a lot of hearts and hands.
I loved it. I had forgotten how good it was. And I was actually covering my eyes because I hate scary movies. And I was scared. And I was the script supervisor, so you would think I would know. But I didn't remember. And what a good filmmaker he is. And hats off to the art department. Wow. Wow.
It was a very fun ride. And I was the set decorator on it, but watching it just made me scream. Those dinosaurs are freaking scary.
No, I wanted to ask, you mentioned that this movie was a little complicated in terms of making it, but when you're getting the call, you know, we're doing the third Jurassic Park movie, when you were approached, did they talk to you about like, the ideas for this movie or what it was going to be? How did you get to work on the film?
Well, my story is a little different because I wasn't called for the film first. I was working on another project, and the woman who was my set decorator all of a sudden, our favorite coordinator all of a sudden one day, she left. She was going to go work on Jurassic Park 3, and I called my agent and said, wait a minute, I've been after you because I know it's coming up. How come you? Well, I'm sorry, we missed it. What do you mean we missed it? And so I didn't get it right away. And then about a week later, I learned through the grapevine that Joe Johnston didn't like the guy he chosen to be the production designer. And so I called my agent back and I said, I want to meet with Joe because I knew Joe before and stuff. And we were together like on, Indiana Jones, the Temple of Doom. So, but you know, we shared an office in L Street in London. But so we knew each other and even greater the same thing. So my agent said, well, I don't know. And I said, because I know Kathy Kennedy too, and I said, if you don't do this, I'm going to call Kathy. And I'll get my own damn meeting and fire you. And so I was like, okay. So then I got the meeting with Joe. And so he's like, okay, yeah, okay, like we did. And that was really how it happened. So and then it was just go into it and develop it as we went along. And then Greg, we could bore you guys for hours with all the stuff that all the development and all that because we didn't have a completed script. And we were developing as we were fun.
I like that term, developing, workshopping, you know?
Yeah.
What about for the rest of you in terms of working on the film?
I'm going to say that I actually spoke to Joe as he was driving back from Montana today to refresh my memory. And he said the one thing he wants everyone to know is that Ed Verreau saved the movie and was his hero.
He got fucking argument.
I had to say that because he also said, and I remember this, you guys probably weren't aware of how much of what you saw was actually on stage because it looked so freaking beautiful. And even I couldn't remember what was real and what wasn't, obviously, boat was on the water, I remember those, but some of the scenes I couldn't tell, and it's because this gentleman and his entire department and the cinematographer, Shelley Johnson, who's brilliant, worked and planned this whole set out to where they were able to get the most amazing set I've ever seen. That's what I have to say.
Yes, I went to Greg to talk to you, Greg, a lot. A lot of times, you said, you just had lunch together, and you were trying to learn some stuff, but, there were times when I would be out of town, in Hawaii scouting and stuff like that, so Greg was back at Universal, you know, carrying all the weight and keeping things moving. So a lot of it is his fault.
So, as you had mentioned, well, you saw about 90% of the film was shot, out on the Universal backlot and on stages. They spent about 2 weeks in Hawaii.
2 weeks.
Shooting and.
Longer. Had two different stints.
Oh,
The
okay.
first time we were in Honolulu, for like 3 weeks
Yeah,
or
that's
4
what
weeks. And then we came back,
Got it.
and then we went to Hawaii.
Well, anyway, I was back in LA, you
The
didn't know all the sets, but, you know, it was a wonderful experience, and I remember when I first got the script, the first script that eventually was kind of thrown out and rewritten. I read the script and I remember saying to my wife, I was laughing, and saying, this is one of the easiest things I've ever seen. Well, you know, little did I know, planning and designing around enormous creatures, and the crew that operated them was really a trick. And what essentially our job was, and as the production designer, got everything designed and approved by Joe. My job was to carry out those designs and hire all the people in the art department and coordinate their efforts. But we solved, and you saw a lot of it, and we happen to answer questions. But we solved one visual problem after another, all based around enormous monsters. So it was quite an experience.
It's about as far as it goes. We gotta get cozy.
Really next to Greg. This is actually my first time really meeting any of these people. I was on Stan Winston's crew and we built the animatronic dinosaurs. And I was inside the adult pteranodon suit, so when I was on set, I didn't meet anybody. So nice to meet you all. I'm sure you saw me on the stage, but I didn't get to talk to any of you. There's that poor bastard in there. Yeah, I was inside the pteranodon, so yeah, so it was really long days, but I was working for Stan Winston and we had just wrapped Galaxy Quest or End of Days. It's been a few years now. And this bay door opened and a forklift came in with these giant molds. I'm like, what's going on? And one of the guys said, here, we got Jp3, we got it here. It's a little dinosaur sign. No way, really? Because Jurassic Park was a very special film for me. So it was a real honor to be a part of, and it was just a wonderful experience to be involved with such a talented crew. And going to stage 28, which was, it's not there anymore, the famous Universal Phantom of the Opera stage, and seeing what everybody had done to make it look like a birdcage was pretty incredible.
Yeah, and that was, the birdcage was actually 3 parts.
Yeah, it was actually, well, I don't know the parts, because there was a part on Hawaii,
Yes.
so, just to break it down, how complicated, most of it was, so. Yeah, okay. I'll start playing with this. Okay, so that whole sequence where they escaped into the birdcage and all, that was broken up into several bits and pieces. So the scene where you see them running up to that little metal building, that was actually on, it was now called the Lucas Ranch. And that was the same location where in first Jurassic, Laura Dern looks up and sees the big, whatever, the big brontosaurus is eating off the trees. That was the same spot. that building was a map. So then we go in, that was a set, that was one set on 28 inside. And then going down, that was another set on stage 27, I think, which we built all the way in. That was it had like a 20-foot deep pit as well as a 30 to 40 foot high stage 4 up. So we did all of that, a lot of that crossing the bridge and all that. And then when Billy's flying back and forth, that was on in the back lot, there's a big blue screen, a big blue sky that we built for Jaws. And we sculpted the Hawaiian, cliffside with water and all that. So that was that part. And then, so it just went on and on and on.
There were actually more parts.
Yeah, there are actually more parts to it.
Yeah.
But so each one of these, an awful lot of this stuff, it looks like it's sort of one sequence of the same thing, but it's not. It was a whole lot of stuff, so we had to figure that out, which is really a lot of fun. Actually, that's one of the most fun things I got to do. And working with Joe and with Shelley and the producers and Steven, because Joe would come into my office a couple of times and he would grab my drawings off my board and say, I'm going to talk to Steven. And then he'd go talk to Steven and come back and say, okay, Steve.
Brenda, I wanted to ask, being a script supervisor and knowing, like Ed mentioned, just going into this movie, changing scripts and everything like that, what does that do for your job? As far as keeping track of everything, and were there like cut moments from the movie or anything like that you remember?
Yeah. So my memory's a little bit different. He says we kept changing scripts. I say we never had one. And we had outlines. We had sort of ideas that were good. And they had a writer, David, I can't pronounce his name, Cook, who really gave them the idea that they liked. But we were ready to start filming and we couldn't push beyond what we pushed, and we had to start filming even though there was no script. So we were ahead of the writers at all times. And I think we went back and finished the movie in January. Am I right about that? It's January? Okay, so it is. Right. So in December, I remember getting a big, huge package on a stage delivered to me, and it was a script for Jurassic Park 3. And I laughed, and I looked through it, and it was like we had shot all those things already, and then guess what? They weren't what was written for the most part. And one of my greatest memories that has to do with that is we were shooting on stage 12, and I saw the scene, and I go, that was the scene. Remember the intimate scene where Taylor and me and Bill Macy are up in the tree at night, and she's leaning back, and they have this, he tells her it's not his fault, her fault. So that scene, Joe was up in that tree on the limb during rehearsals with them, and I couldn't crawl up there, it was down, so I couldn't hear what was going on. He leaned down and he goes, "Brenda," and he handed me a napkin that had New Joe. And that was our scene. That's kind of how it all went.
Kate, what was your favorite set to decorate or to be part of, to construct, especially now seeing it back on the big screen again?
I think it was a small set, but it was inside the truck, that little truck that he was inside, that he escaped to. That you didn't get to see how much stuff was in that truck or how difficult it was to place things because the truck was round. But a memory that I have is one day we had a surprise visit unannounced by Steven Spielberg, and he brought Haley Joel Osment with to come and visit the set. And instead of coming in the main door, he comes in some little tiny side door that takes you, and it was the forest set, the big forest set. And he gets in there, and I see him walking, and he's lost. It was like so real that he couldn't figure out where the actors were, and we had to take him and say, hey, you've got to go through these trees, and the set is in here.
I had that happen to me too.
You got lost?
Yeah, I would literally go over to the set for some reason. I had to talk to Joe, talk to stage. So we could load in and load out at each end and change stuff if we had to. And it was the same with Jp3 that the crashed airplane was in and all that stuff. But I got in there and I said, you don't know where I am. I mean, I was like, I can hear you through, kind of over there somewhere. Couldn't see it. And
Well, to add to that, the way we designed that environment was we started with the, I've never done a jungle before, you have, but we started with essentially the bones of the jungle floor, and we built in all kinds of avenues and line washes, all kinds of things, so that you could look one way and be somewhere, and then you could look another way and be somewhere entirely different. And, you know, that's what also made it very, very confusing now. Yeah, and one of the things we did that may be surprising is that plane fuselage that we saw drop to the jungle floor, that was all done on stage. So the fuselage itself was hauled up to what we call the perms, which is the underside of the roof of the stage, which is about 50 feet up, and dropped it, you know, and then there were multiple fuselages built for different parts of the sequence as the dinosaurs kind of harassed the people inside.
And actually, I want to shout out to Shelley Johnson, too, at the DP, who did an amazing job, and he came up with a different system of lighting, because usually what happens is they just put what they used to call coops, but they're just big lighting boxes up there. So all the light comes kind of down straight. It sort of like turn all the lights on and we're okay, it's lit. And he did a thing where he had specific lights and they had them on tracks, so we could move them around and get these nice, if you notice, like these shafts of light coming down through, and he could adjust them. So every set, every shot was just a little more. I was really impressed with shots.
Mark, what was it like being a Pteranodon?
It was hard. It was really hot and sweaty, and you really couldn't breathe, so they had two air intake systems, one to feed the oxygen and one to take out the CO2. And what really sucked is if somebody was walking by and not paying attention and kicked one of the hoses out, I would know pretty quick, but nobody else would know, so trying to be shaky. Nobody would know why. Oh yeah, no, like I said, this is my first time meeting any of you people, because I was, again, sealed inside the suit, and attending you, so it's meet everybody.
Going method, right?
Total method. Yeah, I mean, again, this film for me was a dream come true, because I grew up watching monster movies, and I was one of the big monster movies. And the last film I saw in New York was Jurassic Park in the theater opening night of June 11th, 1993. And at the end of the film, I stood up with my friends and family and said, I'm going to work on the sequel one day. Now, at that time, I had a better chance of being abducted by space aliens, because I didn't film ever. But, you know, like I said, I got to work for Stan Winston, and then this film happened. And what's even crazier is 25 years ago, this was opening day. 3 years later, my daughter Katie was born, who's here tonight, and having her 22nd birthday. So the suits were very grueling, and Stan had a gym in his studio that was designed by Arnold Schwarzenegger, so it was really nice to enjoy. Yeah, they were buddies. And me and John and Stan paid for a personal trainer to come in every day 2 hours before work. And John and I would work out months beforehand, very specific exercises based on what the costumes were going to entail. So he was a raptor, I was the Pteranodon. And we did this for months to get chip, otherwise that thing would have just fallen like a pancake. It was very, very heavy. And, you know, 25 years ago, those motors that move the head, if they cranked it, it would just send me over. It was really impressive how powerful those machines were. They were. Yeah, they had so there was two. There was like cables that came out the back for some of the bigger motors, and then there were guys doing like the eyes and the mouth were all remote controlled. So it was like, yeah, that was all ours. Yeah, I don't know if they had it on that. I mean, that was a big thing to do. The iris dilation worked really well with the T-Rex, but I know it was. I don't remember making an iris dilation for that character. I don't remember doing that.
yeah, because I was really impressed with that one.
Yeah, they had, I don't think they had the imitating lens. You know, when a raptor blinks, it's like this membrane comes over them completely.
Yeah.
I think we did that digitally on this film, although it was done practically in the other two films. There were some neat advancements on it.
Did Samuel actually kick you when you
No,
kissed
I
him?
think that was the digital one. So there was a lot of like, I don't know if anybody watched Friends with Joe's like, that's me. Like that's kind of how I feel, because it's me, and then it's the digital one, then it's me, you know. So it's a magic trick, and what I thought was really neat too in this film in particular is that there are scenes that our puppets were acting with the digital characters. So like our puppet raptor is like yelling at the digital raptor, and they're acting together. So that was pretty cool too. And what's crazy is, you know, when you're working at stands and they're building this stuff, you know, you walk around and it was a huge studio, and I remember walking by when they were firing up the puppets, and the puppeteers made it like the raptor kind of looked down and like track me, and I'm walking, and it's, you know, I mean, I know it's not real, but there's something very primal about it when you see this predatory animal like following you. So, you know, Stan often said that actors are not acting against our characters, they're reacting to them. So, which I thought was a true statement.
That's well done.
And that kind of thing is just not today. You know, it's rare.
It's coming back though, I think.
I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that, because it does give an actor something to react to rather than a kind of smallness.
Great organic performances you can have. Like you can have things happen that, you know, when the puppeteer makes it lurch and the actor really flinches, you know, you can get those organic, spontaneous performances, you know, especially with good actors.
That was the thing I wanted to ask, because yeah, I feel like Jurassic Park 3 is in this special era where, you know, digital effects and practical really were at their peak, and like, I just can't imagine these, I think, would you say 20,000 pound, you know, Spinosaurus and T-Rex, like, what was it like working with them?
It was gargantuan, and when they fired that thing up and it moved, it was, and you had to have tremendous safety protocols, because these are giant machines that would move very quickly, so it could kill you. So, I mean, really, and when those things fired up, I mean, sadly, I wasn't on the stage when they were shooting the two puppets. I mean, like, you could have sold tickets to just have people sit in the bleachers and watch these things, but it really was impressive. And the Spinosaur was so much more advanced than the T-Rex, and I'm told, and this is an urban legend, I've never seen the footage, maybe you guys have, at the end of the fight, they let them go. They basically told the puppeteers, okay, go for it. It was basically giant rock'em sock'em robots. And the Spinosaur took the head off the T-Rex, and it had like hydraulic fluid flying. I'm sure the footage is somewhere. I've never seen it. I don't know if it's an urban legend, but that's what I heard.
I would like to believe that.
I would too.
Maybe we have some insight on this side of her. Brenda, did you have some insight into this final fight?
I never missed a shot, and I have no recollection of
Then I would say it's an urban legend, and I was
that.
not.
I think
Mythbusting.
we didn't have time to do that. So.
So I'm glad I met you. Now I can put that rumor to rest.
I worked for a little bit on the first Jurassic, doing concept design and stuff with Rick Carter. And one of the things that, because Universal hadn't done the Jurassic Park ride yet, but they were thinking of doing it, they were going to, you know, latch it together with the movie. So one of the ideas was, well, we'll build one set of robots, we'll build one set of puppets, and we'll use them in both places. We'll use them out of the theme park, and we'll use them for the movie. And of course, you know, the guys who were thinking this did not understand that they're completely different, you know.
Yeah, because I know everything. It's like,
Yes. Well, yeah, it takes a large crew, and it takes a much different kind of mechanism to get the real, you know, like the big, broad, and the little tiny, you know, actions that you need for a movie, whereas, you know, a big puppet that's, you know, gonna go every 15 seconds when the book goes by. It's a totally different thing, and it's gotta be waterproof, it's gotta be, you know, so anyway, but yeah, they were really amazing, so.
One of the interesting things, challenging things, is, as Ed mentioned, the dinosaurs, the Spinosaurus and T-Rex moved on tracks, so they just went back and forth, okay, and they could turn their heads, but that was about it, you know, and you know, there were other parts of their bodies that were articulated, but what we had to do was figure out, and the film was heavily story-oriented, which helped tremendously. shots we needed to work to, and how to then reflect back to everybody involved, how to do certain things. Part of that was that, they were so big, and it took a crane to come in overnight to lift them up and move them, so, what we figured out in many cases, and you've been there for this, I think, is that if there was coverage looking in another direction, you didn't move the dinosaur, you moved the set, essentially, to get up, to cover other angles. So it was very tricky to plot through all of that and figure out, those moves, when those things had to happen.
So you especially had to keep track of all that, you had to keep track of making everything.
So they said that it was heavily storyboarded, so you have to imagine heavily storyboarded for the action sequences for a movie that didn't have a script. So, and think of all the different locations we were where they were saying that this part of the forest was in Kauai, and that part of the river was in Kauai, but then the reverse angle was on stage 12, and there was, another angle of that, so it was a constant matching and going back into scenes over and over and over again, 1,000 miles apart, thousands of miles apart.
That's one of the things that, that's one of the things that I was really aware of too, when I first saw it, and also just this evening. This is pretty seamless. Yeah, I think it's pretty.
Incredibly seamless. And also, didn't you mention that because you're filming this at Universal Studios in 2000, year 2000? So wouldn't the Jurassic Park ride already be open, like across the way from when you're?
Yes, we went. We would sneak out at lunch and we would go down the thing to sneak in and do the ride. I remember I did that with Joe and Larry Franco was a class act, and the golf cart. No, we had to walk through the back. Yeah, don't tell me.
From stage 12, you could also hear the music for the ride.
Hearing the John Williams theme song while you're working on
Yes,
the movie.
yeah, if you were outside the stage.
Well, my son, who was 8 or 9, in fact, and he would hang out and had a young set PA, Lindsay. They would go off, she'd take him off, they'd go to the lot, and then they'd go ride the Jurassic Park ride there 3 or 4 times in a row. And then come back to the office totally soaked.
That's hilarious. I want to get a couple questions from the audience, but I guess do any of you have any memories or just maybe insights into working with Stan Neal on this or seeing him on set or anything like that?
He had an incredible wine vineyard, I think, in New Zealand, and he brought everybody wine. That's cases, not to lowly people like me, but cases to them. And the director.
Get any?
Because you were inside the dinosaur.
Dinosaurs don't drink wine.
Yeah, no, he was very gracious, and when my son would come visit, he'd sometimes come and hang out on set with me, and he was always very friendly to my son and stuff, which I really appreciated. Just with this, but he thought he was good for a long time.
Well, thank you guys so much. Is there, if anybody wants a question answered